All right, here we go. Stocks by the numbers, welcome back. And markets obviously climbing higher, consistently hitting these new highs. Apparently, I'm honestly not sure how long this is going to keep going, but I guess you ride the wave and you take them as you see them, right? But I wanted to do a quick update here on SoundHound, symbol SOUN, here on the NASDAQ. Stock right now about 12 and a half. It's up about 3/4 of a point, roughly 6.5% today. And we last looked at it back here June 10th, I believe it was, right here as it pulled back, and we were watching this support trend line here, and we were saying that if we broke down, we could potentially see the nines and the eights, and we could even see a drop all the way back down here to this trend line of about 7.5. The issue, though, is that not only do markets consistently keep hitting highs, however, all of this new money seems to be flowing into essentially any tech company, any AI company, any company to do with EVs, any company to do with battery technology is still seems pretty hot, even though the companies aren't posting numbers. You guys see companies like Big Bear AI, right? That's trending. A lot of young people are talking about it. You might have a couple of people like myself speaking about how could be viewed as overvalued, right? If we look at the actual revenue coming in, we kind of miss the mark a handful of times, but that doesn't seem to matter, and we consistently keep climbing. Looking at stocks like ASTS, we know pre-revenue company, right? Hands down, pre-revenue company, right? That's not even up for debate. And the market cap is roughly, 3x what SoundHound is right now. So it's funny because if we actually look at the numbers of SoundHound, we can probably come to the conclusion that it's absolutely overvalued. However, it could continue to keep climbing just because it's a young, growing, up-and-coming name in the tech space that's connected to AI. So strictly because it's in the space and we consistently keep getting updates from all the other companies talking about how much demand they're getting and how much they're increasing future profits, future revenue ranges, right? I'm raising my guidance full year. So essentially, it's all probably going to continue to keep climbing up. And it seems like it's probably going to be some sort of geopolitical event or some big announcement coming out of the Trump administration that's probably going to toss a wrench into the machine here. Because we just continue to keep climbing. I mean, we come back to I'll go to SoundHound in a second, but we come back to the NASDAQ here. I mean, look at this. Look at this. We began this big drop off, this big correction that, in my opinion, well overdue, right? And we were talking about some key support levels, and you can see, like, we didn't even really come down to it, and we immediately had a massive V-spike recovery. And now you can see here, look, if we back this up, this is the support going from mid-October 22 and coming up and touching that next low right there, November 22, you can see touching that low right there, March 13, 23, right? Touching those lows there, October 26, 23. And look, you can see that we obviously broke below it, crashed hard, and then instantly rebounded to it, and we're consistently making highs, just hugging this trend line, consistently ticking higher. So, as we used to say, take what the market gives you, and right now the market is just giving essentially almost every name across the board is getting a massive bump, right? So something like Sound, to go back to our original point, even though it could be viewed as overvalued, market cap $5 billion. Last quarter, the company brought in about $30 million in revenue. Earnings coming up in about 3 weeks, expected around the first week of August. You can see analysts expecting a loss of 9 1/3 cents a share on revenue of $32.88 million. 32 million, market cap 5 billion, right? However, also interesting, you look on a day like today, right? Markets are green, we're consistently climbing, tech is up, everything's hitting highs, and what do you see? You see something like SoundHound, which technically in the fundamentals could be viewed as overvalued, as we said. However, we currently have 20% more than the average daily volume. And we technically still have, 20 minutes and change to go. And you can see 47 million shares, average volume 40 million. So even though these names are overvalued, people are continuing to add to the positions, take new positions in almost all of these younger up and coming names. And you can see everything that's trending, right? RCAT started to get trending, right? You guys wanted a video on RCAT. And then what happened? Boom. We had Hegseth come out. Oh, yeah, we're lifting drone regulations. We're going to start ordering drones and venture into that type of warfare, right? And boom, all of a sudden, all those stocks started to run. You have those rocket stocks again, ASTS with the telecom satellites. You have Rocket Lab even as well. They're just climbing up 6, 7, 10% a day, consistently climbing, because it seems as though everyone across the board is consistently adding to the position and continuing to buy. So essentially, it's really coming down to supply and demand, it looks like. And even something like SoundHound here, I know I just went off on a massive tangent, but even something like Sound here, as we broke this support trend line, fought to get back above it, and then had a big spike up to this trend line right here. You can see 13 and a half about 10 days ago. Then you can see the drop back to the moving average, technically still above this support trend line, right, if we were to extend it out. And you can see that, again, we're on the up and up. So it looks as though, again, we had a slight break and now we're climbing, and we're going to potentially be stepping like this, and we're going to be making higher highs and higher lows going into earnings. If, of course, we don't get some random announcement and markets start to really start chunking down big, rejecting off of these highs. Unless something like that happens, then probably we're going to see a step up like this, right? So you could potentially see a climb up looking like about 14 and a quarter, 14 and a third, retesting this trend line. Maybe another drop here, back to around this key level here, 12 and a third, 12 and a half. And then you could, see the run up going into earnings. And then pending exactly what the company says, you might actually see a break up, and this might climb back up to 18 and a half, $20+. Now, again, I don't want to get hopes up because technically in the numbers, it's overvalued. However, if essentially the value is 90% now based on mass psychology and supply and demand, as opposed to sound fundamentals and sound balance sheets and healthy, financials, then technically, I guess if you're involved in this one, you're going to find yourself potentially in the right place at the right time, if this does work out as we're saying. So, again, it's really not much of an update, but I guess everything will keep going higher. Again, it's just difficult to know exactly what is coming and what's coming around the corner and what's going to happen. Because again, the worst thing you want is to start to take a position in something like Sound at 12 and a half, and then everything starts tumbling down for a little bit. The next thing you know, the stock's back here at 8, the stock's down here at 7 and a half, right? Because we know that does hurt. That does hurt. And that's the only thing that's making me very hesitant here. Because I know a lot of people out there are going to say markets are, consistently climbing, hitting highs. You got to ride the wave. We're going to keep hitting highs. Okay, that makes sense. But also at the same time, I thought we made a pretty strong argument a couple of years ago where economic data was weak. People were expecting the rate cuts, if you recall, and the rate cuts never came through. Yet we would, the Dow would chunk up 700 points. And like, it didn't even make logical sense. Like, everyone's waiting for the rate cuts. You're going to pump the market if they cut rates. Then they say they're not cutting rates, but you pump the market anyway. You know what I mean? So we just have been on this wild ride. And the last thing I want is for people to get locked into companies that aren't fairly valued and then have a big drop and a big market correction. Because again, as we know, something like SoundHound, 30 million a quarter. I mean, we could bring this down to $1 billion market cap again, right? And right now we're at 5. So that would be an 80% drop. But as of right now, we appear to be on the up and up. So, in my opinion, again, it looks like the next stop should be this trend line here of about 14 and a quarter. Let's see if we have any recent news here. SoundHound, yep, okay. Indicates that healthcare is becoming a notable area of adoption, right? I mentioned this a while ago. In the first quarter of 25, SoundHound reported that 3 well-regarded healthcare organizations renewed and expanded their engagements. This included a major medical billing firm, provider at-home diagnostics. These renewals reflect not only confidence in SoundHound's technology, but also growing traction within the healthcare vertical. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to read, everything and sit here for, 30 minutes, but basically we spoke about the Amelia acquisition, the expansion into the healthcare sector. Competition is intensifying from larger players like Microsoft and Amazon, who are also accelerating efforts. Right, but again, I feel they're almost, I feel they're slightly ahead of the curve, right? And again, we recall the CEO coming out saying they were approached multiple times in the past, which is why I always kind of stuck with SOUN. And of course, they were kind of, for the most part, consistently signing new deals, right? We kept hearing about the expansion with this company, signing with drive-thrus and whatnot. What was it, Krispy Kreme, White Castle, right? We kept getting all of these positive updates. They would come out, they were meeting revenue estimates, they were slightly beating revenue estimates. So people were getting more and more pumped about the company. And over the long term, I do still like it. But again, I just re-mention that even though we're talking about potential competition now, quote, intensifying from larger players like Microsoft and Amazon, again, I say it may be in their best interest, at the risk of being too forward, of just taking a couple of billion now and just scooping up SoundHound, in my opinion. Okay, we're reading Amazon, yeah, Alexa, okay. Forward 12-month price to sales ratio of 24. They have it right here as a hold. Again, I do think it is overvalued. Could easily come back down here and come back to the single digits. But over the long term, I do still like it. And I do think we will eventually see like that 2025 level again and go near those new highs. Let's recheck some news. Don't expect much in the second half. That remains to be seen. Piper Sandler downgrades to neutral from overweight. Price target $12. It's essentially where the stock is now. That was a couple of days ago. Can SoundHound be the next NVIDIA? AI demand grows. And real quick, let me actually, just on the other screen, let me pull up FinViz and just check that short interest for you. But also I pointed out that what potentially looked like a head and shoulders pattern too, and you could see we had a slight break and then we came back up to the trend line. So that's why sometimes it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. And that's why, again, we try to draw out some of the trend lines, mention some key levels, and that's why if you happen to see a break, right, you could potentially know that we're going to go a little bit lower for a little while, and then if it climbs back up to retest the level, then obviously, you can say, okay, we might be gaining some traction, we might pop back above that support, but it's hard to say. Here, even, let me bring this down here, FinViz, you can see, just look also, we have this tightening taking place. Short float right now sitting at 33%. So this is why, again, if we potentially pop it up and we consistently make higher highs here and go into this upward channel, if we break up here and pass roughly 13.5 and we start heading to 14, getting to this trend line, that might cause the squeeze and the volume might really start coming in, and you could potentially see a pop to 15, 16 even before earnings over the next week or two, potentially. But again, technically, even though it again could be viewed as overvalued, you can see the support and the building and the nice bounces when we have the tightening taking place and the retest of support. You can see it's been holding its own, right? So that's why I think if we were just to kind of draw out that trend line and just extend it here across the tops, you're looking at about 14. You're looking at about 14, right? Yeah, let's do it right now. 1166, right? If we extend, oh, well, technically we hit it. 1365, but again, in my opinion, I think it's going to break up above that. Actually, the more I look at it, I actually think it's going to test this line here. I think it's going to go straight through there, make that higher high. I think it's going to hit 14 and a quarter and potentially catapult right through, and you might see 16. But again, I don't want to get anyone's hopes up. This is just my opinion. But just wanted to take a quick look here at SOUN, and I did want to mention the volume as well. And in my opinion, what could potentially keep climbing, even though the markets, again, we keep climbing, we keep hitting highs, but we might continue this trend throughout the rest of July and even potentially going into August. And then we could have the big market sell-off in September, October. I know a lot of other analysts out there are saying people are speculating that we could potentially see rate cuts in September. So obviously we're going to have to play it by ear, day by day, but that could be when the party stops, so to speak. So that's pretty much it, though. I'll end it there. So stay sharp, and pay attention to what's happening around you. Try to absorb all the news possible so that you can try to strategize and pick your next move. But I'll end it there. Stocks by the numbers. Thanks for stopping by. Questions and comments, drop it in the comments, right? All that stuff. That helps out the algorithm. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask, right? That's our handshake agreement. That's how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, volatile, and very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.